Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, episode 19.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.
Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards, and we're in the middle of a three-part series, the three most fatal marketing mistakes chiropractors make. On the last episode, we covered the number 3 most fatal marketing mistake chiropractors make, and that was follow-up. So if you haven't listened to that, please go back and listen to the number 3 mistake. On today's episode, we're going to cover number 2, and it really is, one of the biggest pieces. It's the number 2 piece, and that's having a plan. So we're going to dig into that today and talk a lot about why this is such a fatal mistake. And, we've spent a lot of time actually talking about what not to do. And, one of the things that's important is what to do. So we want to make sure that you guys know how to do that. And if you haven't noticed, there's a few people online these days. It's around 4 billion. So people are, joining the online movement, if you want to call it that. The half of the world's population nearly is online. And a lot of chiropractors aren't online, at least not with their marketing. So we want to run a webinar for you guys and give you some of that information so you guys know what to do instead of just focusing on all the things not to do. So here's some of the things that we're going to talk about. We're going to show you a 7-step process that moves people in your community from oblivious to curious. And then obviously the most important piece, into your office. We're going to show you how to create a lead magnet that people and your prospects will happily give you their name and email for, how to handle the new Facebook ad feature that just made advertising in your office for Facebook a million times easier if you haven't tried this before. The one thing that you need to get right if you want to maximize your return on investment with every marketing project, not just your online marketing projects, and the 3-step follow-up strategy that you must employ to radically increase your conversions. We're going to talk about a bunch of more things on the webinar, so make sure you jump in. The webinar registration page is www.lifebydesignforchiropractors.com/online sales funnel. That's online sales funnel. So head over to lifebydesignforchiropractors.com/online sales funnel. Hope to see you at the webinar, guys. Enjoy today's episode of Life by Design for Chiropractors. Michael Gibson, welcome back to Life by Design for Chiropractors. How are you today?
I am great. 2 weeks in a row. Lucky me.
I know. Back to back. I know Cratio is going to be very disappointed, but you know what? He does get the number 1 most fatal mistake chiropractors make episode, so I think that makes up for it.
I totally agree.
So we are, guys, talking today about the 3 most fatal marketing mistakes chiropractors make. On the last episode, if you didn't listen to that, go back and check it out. We talked about mistake number 3, which was actually follow-up. And difficult to place these because all the mistakes have their own set of nuances, and you could easily make the case one over the other. But this is the order we've gone through. There's a specific approach that we have to this. So number 3 was follow up, and just leaving so many leads on the table and not following up with them. And please go back and listen to it because there's a lot of good stuff and action steps there for you. So today's episode, Mike, we're actually talking about not having a plan. And huge mistake, obviously. Another mistake that chiropractors notoriously make is having no plan, being all over the place with their marketing in general, not to mention their practices in general, and probably other things outside of their practices in general. But, the bad part about not having a plan, the part that really is why you need one, I think a couple big ones. Number 1, you're just wasting so much money. you're just leaving so much on the table, and then you're spending so much on things that don't matter. You last week got introduced to the pray and spray for the first time. Now I've seen you play golf. Well, you've played with me, so you should know all about the pray and spray mentality. I was going to say you, but I've actually seen you play, and I probably couldn't go there since, your last couple of times your iron game's been pretty tight, so I'll leave it at that. But, that's the problem, right, is that if you're just all over the place, you don't have a plan, there's a lot of big mistakes. So other than wasted money, what are some of the other big problems with not having a plan?
Now, I promised before I go any further that I would give credit where credit is due. I had never heard of the term pray and spray, especially as it applies to marketing. And it was Dr. Chris Alberts who gave me, shared this gem with me. And funny enough, since he mentioned it to me a couple of weeks ago, I've seen it everywhere. I've heard people actually talking about it. So
that's funny.
Maybe I'm just out of the loop. I don't know. But I said it last week, and I felt guilty that I didn't, give him props for.
I thought you were going to give me props for my golf game.
Well, I was thinking as we said this, and my memory is bad, but I'm pretty sure you beat me last time. So
actually, your memory is bad. I did not beat you last time. Actually, you were right. We played at LifeCon last year. I did beat you.
Yeah,
so
I think you did,
you are correct. You were pretty bad that day. No offense.
Thanks. Thanks for bringing that up.
That's no problem. It's no problem. So, give me some of the other reasons why not having a plan is such a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes for anything. I mean, let's just go back to basics here. Anytime that you do anything without a plan, it generally doesn't end well, and especially when you don't have a plan for something as important as marketing, it's guaranteed to fail. And I want everyone listening to understand that, as we go through these, the reason I think this is so clear for both you and I, Jamie, that these are big mistakes is because we've made them. And I look back and I think, and I know this is true now because I watch, people we work with and I watch other chiropractors doing it all the time. But I also know that this is something that I did for many, many years of my practice is that, when I put together a marketing plan, and I think I mentioned before, I was fortunate. I did get a lot of referrals very early in practice, so that's primarily how I built my entire practice. I did very little marketing, back in the day. It makes me feel old. But what I would do is I would, you'd go to a weekend conference because, social media wasn't as big then. And, I would hear of some new cool marketing thing. I'd come back on Monday. I'd implement it with no idea of really what I should expect for a return. I'd have no concept of how that integrated with everything else I was doing. I just, some other chiropractor told me that he got 472 new people from it, so I decided it was a really good idea, and so I needed to do it right away on Monday because I would love 470 new people. Who wouldn't? So, I can't.
I wouldn't actually.
I don't know if I ever told you this. Actually, that's so true. I would not. I don't know if I've told you this. This is classic, and I think people will appreciate this. So, in my old practice where we were before we outgrew the space, we were in an area with a high Asian population. And so I had the genius idea that I should start putting ads in the local Asian newspaper, which of course was written in Chinese or Mandarin. Excuse me for not knowing the difference. But I actually had them all translated. And they went into these newspapers, and I don't know how much money I spent. Not that much, maybe a couple $1,000, but not one person even called or was interested. But I still have a little cutout of the ad. Like what was I thinking? But anyway, stupid stuff like that I did, and it had no relation to anything I was doing. It was not my avatar. It wasn't someone like. There's obviously oftentimes, a language barrier there. I mean, it wasn't a good fit, and it's stuff like that I've done in the past. I was like, what was I thinking as I look back on it? And, it all comes back to this, is that I didn't have any type of plan. It was absolutely pray and spray. Just, I would just come up with these crazy ideas and try them, and surprise, they didn't work. I mean, you're right. I wasted a lot of people, I wasted a lot of money, and I wasted a lot of people, I guess, in the sense that so many of them were so wrong for my practice. And then I get frustrated. I get annoyed. It's like, oh man, like these new people that I've got, I didn't really necessarily enjoy having them in the practice simply because they weren't necessarily happy because it wasn't a good fit for them either. And so it was really stressful. I wasted a lot of energy. It was like pulling teeth. I had to convince them all the time. So it just wasn't good, for so many reasons. And it all came down to, actually I should say, it didn't all come down to one thing. It came down to several of these things, especially these three big mistakes we're sharing. But a big part of it is I had no integrated plan and no purposeful plan for my marketing that was going to bring me a consistent flow of pre-qualified new people who I would enjoy seeing and taking care of, and who would absolutely, love my service in return.
Well, that's the type of practice that I think people want. It's the kind of practice I want. And you hit on, Some really important points there. It's not just about having a profitable practice. It's definitely not just about having, a practice that sees the most people in your practice. I think a big part of practice is having a practice that you love and that you enjoy, and you enjoy being in the practice. You enjoy checking the people who are part of your practice. So a big part of that is, the pre-qualification process and attracting people, who do fit that group of people that you want to take care of. And you alluded to it a bit, but to go even further, and maybe my experience was just more extreme, when you have the wrong people, it's really stressful. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy. It's challenging. It's difficult. It's, painful. It destroys your self-esteem. It's such a difficult thing to deal with when you're getting this stream of the wrong people in your practice. And you actually start to question whether or not, your other systems are good. But you could have great day one and day two systems. You could have a great internal process. But, the lower quality your pre-qualification is, the more difficult it's going to be to move them through that process. And you start thinking to yourself, what am I doing wrong? It's just this endless, downward spiral. So, that's such an important point of why having a plan is so important. The opposite of this is, what you get out of having a plan, why you need a plan, obviously it's just the reverse. It's, you get a better return on your investment. You're, getting better and more pre-qualified people, which makes it more enjoyable. It's an easier, day one, day two sales process. And, it's just energetically, you're not wasting as much energy on people who you don't want to be in your practice. And that all is the upward spiral, right? It just makes you feel better about yourself. It makes you feel like you know what you're doing. It builds your confidence. And then that just is cyclical. It just kind of keeps cranking all the way up and up and up. So, Mike, I think, the big question is, I think everybody understands this to a degree, but there's some specifics here. Why do we need a plan in general? We kind of talked a bit in the pre-show about this. What are some of the big things that having a plan and having that in place are going to give to a practice and to a doctor?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is really an extension of what we talked about last week and this 90-10. And please go back and listen to that one so you get full context for this. But, the 90-10, essentially what we were saying is that on a typical marketing project, you may have 10 of those people 10 of 100 people come in and the other 90% say, no, thank you. So what we were talking about last time is having some type of follow-up so that we could capture more of the 90 and we could dip into that, that group of people and hopefully attract more of them, more than 10% of them into the practice. So I think a big part of it is understanding that whole temperature gradient we talked about as well. Essentially the idea that, people are going to be a cold lead in the sense that they don't, know who you are and don't even know what a chiropractor does, all the way to, I really would love to come and see you. I'd love to see if you can, you can help me. Taking them through that continuum and that progression and having a system in place to do that, because, you shouldn't speak to people the same. You shouldn't use the same conversation, the same communication strategy for someone who's never heard of chiropractic versus someone who's been studying you, following you, knows everything about you, and just needs a little push to get you to come into the office. So, having a good system ensures that you've really done a good job at understanding your market, but also understanding the temperature gradient and understanding that you need to have all different aspects of the funnel. And to speak generally of it, there's really the three main phases: the attraction phase, the conversion phase, and then the retention phase. But you need to have a system that integrates seamlessly from one step to the next, so that you can leverage every single person that you ever come in contact with. All 100%. You can in some way connect with them. I'm not saying all 100 are going to come in, but that you can connect with all of them and significantly increase the number of people, the return on investment that you get from any one single marketing project.
I think that's the key to this whole concept of having a plan or a blueprint, and that's this idea of integration. in a well-designed plan, there is a lot of moving parts. I know yours is, extremely, integrated in so many steps, and you and I have worked together on mine, and there's a lot of different layers from, your outside speaking to your inside speaking to your website to, lead magnets to Facebook advertising to, everything you're doing. It all has to be integrated together. And it can't just be something, where it's like, well, I'm going to go do a talk or, let's do a Facebook ad. There's a way that this pulls together and allows each of the individual components to be connected. And, you don't just show up on Monday and say, all right, well, we need new people. So, what are we going to do this week? What ad are we going to run this week? Or what, marketing piece are we going to deliver? What free exam are we going to, offer this week? So integration is such a huge component of it. The other one that I think about a lot for me, being busy and having all kinds of other responsibilities, is the automation. How do you automate marketing without a plan? I don't know how people do this unless you're able to see and, vision cast, how this process is going to unfold in your office, so you can actually take the time to build out, whether it be a funnel or build up, the follow-up systems or the lead magnets and things like that. You have to know how it all blends together. And then the last one that I think about, and maybe you can touch on this, is just the scalability of it all. Like, what does an office do when they want to go from 100 visits to 200 visits? If they need to market, say, XYZ amount to get to 100, then obviously they're going to have to increase their marketing to grow to the next level and sustain that. If you are trying to remember, I got to send an email to that person I met at this talk, I have to do a Facebook ad today. If you don't have that, built out and systematized, how the heck are you going to scale that to something beyond, just a very minimal tactic-driven marketing system?
And even before, Jamie, there's one even more important question, is knowing what to scale. Knowing how to scale is one question, but a more important thing is to make sure that you scale the right thing. And again, another mistake that I certainly made is just, and this is so important to marketing, especially when we're investing big dollars in some of these campaigns and marketing projects that we're getting into, is that we really don't take the time to measure how we did. What was the return on the investment? How were the quality of the leads? What was the retention like with those specific? Not just what's your retention overall for all the new people you got, but what's the retention for people who came from your website versus a screening versus a talk versus a referral? Knowing all those different metrics is critical so that you know where to put your attention. And I think, another common thing that I see is that we tend to kind of in chiropractic kind of do what the gurus did, and some of those gurus may have been doing these things, decades ago, but it's something that, in successful chiropractors do screening, so you have to do a screening. And even though you've been doing it for 10 years and you've got, 2 people from it, you keep doing it because that's what chiropractors are supposed to do. And I think, obviously, a little bit of an exaggeration there and sensationalizing a little bit, but I think that is true for many, many projects, is that we don't take the time to actually measure the effectiveness of it to know where we should even put our energy and resources. Where should we put more money? You can put Facebook ads all day long, but if you're not going to take the time to actually look and see what the results of it was, if it's actually generating leads for you, and then is it on the back end actually generating good quality pre-qualified new people for you, you need to know that to know whether or not you should start spending $100 a day. Maybe you should do that. But you can't know unless you have a system in place to actually measure and keep track of these things and really strategically and objectively decide where you should scale different projects. And then to answer your question more specifically, how to scale, it really depends, of course, on the specific project. I just gave the example of Facebook. That's pretty easy. You create a bigger audience, you put more money, you throw more money at it, and that's an easy way to scale that. Maybe if it's giving talks, if you're a great speaker and you do really well, speaking to a room, then maybe it's hiring someone where their job is just to go out and book talks for you. So there's, it's different for every type of project, but scaling, more importantly, I think it's just knowing what to scale. And that starts with having a system in place to take good, get good metrics and get good data on what you have done, what's worked and what hasn't.
Right. And I think that, you nailed it with the ideas. You have to have, a system in place, to develop even the knowledge base to know what it is that you're going to be scaling. And I mean, that's a whole other animal and project in of itself. And it leads to a really, I think, an important question that I think, is interesting. And we're going to talk about it on today's episode, because I think it's something that doesn't get talked about a lot in the profession. And, that's, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? So you have this plan, and, we can talk about the plan that we've created, Mike, and the graphic, and we'll get to that here in a second. But really, you have to actually start with asking yourself, what's your vision? And in chiropractic, it's just, it is what it is. It's, I want to see 2,000 people a week. And so they don't actually think about what they really truly want. When I've asked people this, if we're doing coaching, one of the first things I talk to them about is, what are you trying to create? What is it that you actually want? Everybody they automatically jump to, 300 visits a week. It's I have this chuckle inside my head every single time, because no matter who I talk to, almost always it's, I want to see 300 visits a week. It's this, magical number that somehow if you see 300 visits, regardless of how much they pay you, if you see 300 visits a week, that somehow you're successful. And, you have to be honest with yourself. What is it you're trying to accomplish? I know, Mike, you're one of the first people that, I knew had this in their mind. You knew exactly the number of checkups you wanted to have every week. It was some weird number, like 213 checkups, on the couple of days that you're in practice. You wanted to only have that many, and then your associates would see the rest. And I don't think enough people take the time to figure that out, because from a marketing perspective, if you know all your conversion rates and statistics and what's working, what's not, you can start to then determine and know, what is my marketing going to deliver? So if you create a marketing plan, which is, huge and robust, and let's say you bring in 300 new people a year, that's fine and dandy if you need 300 new people a year to sustain what you're trying to create. If not, that actually creates a whole other problem and stress that is only actually going to be a negative for you. So, where do people start with this, Mike, and defining, what it is they actually want versus, just kind of jumping into the blanket idea of what every other chiropractor thinks they're supposed to be doing?
Wow, that's a big question. I think it was a couple episodes ago we talked about the productivity system, and our first comment about becoming more productive was really first doing some significant thinking about what it is that we really want. Because I think you are right, and I certainly fell into this category. Is that my number wasn't 300, but it used to be 500 a week. That's what I always wanted to see when I first started practice. And I actually had the opportunity when I was in the first year, twice I went for a week period at a time to locum for a local doc, and he saw 600 a week. And then at that time I think I was maybe 6 months into practice. I think I was seeing around 70 or 100 a week at that point. And so I saw his practice and my practice. I would drive back and forth. Anyway, so I was seeing whatever it was, 600-700 a week. I don't remember the exact number. But the point was, at the end of those two time periods, I knew something very clearly. There was no way I ever in my life wanted to see that many people in a week again. Ever. I absolutely hated it. So, first of all, you're right. You've got to figure out what it is that you actually want. And is it that you want to see 300 a week or 500 or 600 or whatever it might be? Is that because that's what, our profession is deemed as the success threshold? Or is it because you've done the actual math to figure out that that's how many people you need to see to earn a certain amount of income to live the life you want? If that's the case, then great. But if it's just some arbitrary number that sounds pretty cool, or that you've heard others who you think are successful, that's how many they see, then I really encourage you to sit down and really think about, what it is you actually want, and more importantly, why do you actually want it? And then just work backwards. Like you said, Jamie, if you're using the success surveillance system or any other stats pack, you should know exactly how many new people you need to get in order to reach your practice, volume goal. It should be a very, very simple calculation. And that's really where it should start in coming up with this plan, is that you first need to decide how many new people you have, because I've worked with a lot of people trying to help them create marketing plans. And, when I ask them, what projects are you currently doing, or do you want to do? And they have this long, long list of all these things they want to do. I'm like, you only need 4 more new people than you're getting now, I mean, you really don't need to do half of those things. Mm-hmm. You can save a ton of money, a ton of time, a ton of stress. If you just created a plan that's just going to get you 4 more new people a month. So right. Understanding that first is, I think, the first and most important thing is, what's your vision? Why is it your vision? Really doing some deep thinking about that. I think that's where you would start, because I think, if you have and build a retention-based practice like we recommend, you're going to realize pretty quick that you actually don't need that many new people, which I guess is a whole nother discussion.
It is a whole nother discussion, Mike, but you're going to need some new people to come into your practice, and that number is going to be determined by what it is you're trying to accomplish. Are you one doctor? Are you multiple doctors? Other considerations, obviously, what's your team like? Do you have the skills and capabilities to handle that many new people? Do you have the skills and capabilities to run a marketing system, even if someone created it for you? So there's a million pieces of this puzzle. It's very, very big. Today's episode is really just giving you an overall framework and just identifying what that second most fatal mistake chiropractors make is. This is obviously, we talked about it last week, but this is what our topics are at LifeCon 2016, really, getting you guys marketing like it's the actual year you live in. And just in case you wondered, it isn't 1992, it's actually 2016. So, you might as well start marketing like it's 2017 at this point. And one of the things that we created, which I'm really excited to see actually, Mike, is this the ultimate marketing blueprint for chiropractors, into this really incredible graphic that you and I had some time to develop on paper. So we're just waiting for it to come back from the designer. And that's something that we're going to be giving away at LifeCon this year, just as a tool for people to have kind of a visual of all the things that they could be doing, how it all integrates together. And I know I'm a visual person, so seeing this is going to be extremely valuable. I'm really looking forward to seeing that come together. So guys, make sure that if this is something that resonates with you, please check out LifeCon. Go there, bestlifeconever.com. Check it out. We'll be in September in Ottawa. It's going to be a blast, because it's really going to be all this stuff that we've been covering over these 3. So on next week's episode, make sure you listen in. It's going to be the number 1 most fatal mistake that chiropractors make with their marketing. So please check it out. And thank you so much for listening to Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic.